Verse number 1 of Psalm chapter number 51, it says, "Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness, according to the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquity, cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against thee, thee only, have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight. Thou mightest be justified when thou speakest, be clear when thou judgest. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken may rejoice. Hide thy face from my sins, blot out all my iniquities." Number 10 says, "Create me a clean heart, O God, renew a right spirit within me." And verse number 11, "Cast me not away from thy presence, take not thy Holy Spirit from me." Verse number 12, our last verse we'll read, "Restore to me the joy of thy salvation, uphold me with thy free spirit." And we'll go ahead and pray. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the ability to be here. Bless all the folks that are here. Give us a good time of word tonight. And just give us a good time of fellowship afterward. Protect us as we go home. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. So this, of course, is just like our heading says, that it's right after David's sin with Bathsheba. Of course, we know that. He took another man's wife, and he tried to cover it up. He got her husband killed. He was a great soldier, and he put him in the forefront of battle and got him killed. And after it didn't work out that he could cover it up any other way, he decided that would be the best way. So he got her husband killed and thought he had covered it up. And then our heading, of course, tells us what happened. It says, "And Nathan, the prophet, came unto him and told him that he had sinned." And here's Nathan telling him that he'd sinned, and David admits it. And what you'll find is that's the first thing, if you're not right with God, that's the first thing you have to do is, number one, admit that you're not right with God. That sounds pretty simple. But just asking yourself, how could a man like David, who God said was a man after his own heart, how could a man like that sin this great wickedness that David did? How could David do that? If it says he was a man after God's own heart, how could he do that? And many of us, I don't know, some of us may be thinking, well, if you're a man after God's own heart, then you must not ever sin. But of course, we know that's not true. And that, of course, is indicated by the fact that David sinned, even though he was a man after God's own heart. But rather, when we do sin, we immediately admit fault. That may sound pretty simple, that's kind of what you do, but it's kind of a lost art these days. It's never anybody's fault. Everybody always blames everything on everybody else. It's never anyone else's fault. But David didn't do that. Turn to 2 Samuel chapter number 12. This, of course, is when Nathan, the prophet, comes to David. 2 Samuel chapter number 12. Verse number 11. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor. He shall lie with their wives in the sight of the sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun." 13 says, "And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, The Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die." So David immediately admitted that he was at fault. So the first step in having a heart after God's own heart is immediately admitting that you're a sinner. Immediately admitting that you're a sinner. That's what David did, is he immediately admitted that he was a sinner. A lot of times it's so hard to do. It's so deep within us to immediately say, no, it's not my fault. It's almost like a second nature. You know, nobody has to teach us how to lie and say, whoa, not my fault. I didn't do it. You know, first thing that happens, the first thing that you do when you're a child, when you learn how to talk, is you learn how to lie and say, I didn't do it. Did you do this? Did you eat that cookie? No. No, I didn't do it. Didn't do it. So nobody has to teach us how to do that. So it's something we have to fight against, is the urgency of our own lives to protect ourselves and self-preservation. Say, nope, I didn't do it. The universal, way to a good relationship, I guess, is saying, I don't know. The question to everything is, I don't know. What are you doing there? I don't know. Where'd you come from? I don't know. What are you doing? I don't know. That's what people like to do. They don't have to answer anything. I don't know. Because that's the first step, is to admit that you're a sinner, admit that you have sinned, admit your guilt. That's what David did. The second step is to understand its condition. Notice the use of the word clean several times in our passage. David is asking us David asking God, rather, to cleanse him from his unrighteousness. He admitted his fault, and he understood its condition. What's the opposite of being clean? Dirty. So if he was asking God to cleanse his heart, then he understood that he was dirty. He understood the condition of his heart. He understood he was the opposite of clean. He was dirty. David understood the many conditions of the heart. It's amazing to realize all of the Psalms that David wrote, presumably before this happened. Psalms 10 talks about how he understood the pridefulness of the heart. The Bible says pride goeth before what? Destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. He understood the pridefulness of his heart, but yet David himself was susceptible to pride in this instance. Psalms chapter number 12, going right along, he understood the hypocrisy of the heart. Psalms chapter 28, he understood his heart's dependence upon God. He understood that the moment he got away from God, that he would fall into sin. Yet he allowed himself to do so. This is the man who wrote these Psalms. Psalms chapter number 44, verse number 21. He understood God's knowledge of the heart. He knew he couldn't hide anything from God, yet he felt like he could cover up his sin. These are all the Psalms that David wrote, going right down the list, all the things that he wrote. He wrote the book when it comes to God's knowledge of the heart and his own heart. Psalm 61, verse number 2, he understood the frailty of his heart and how easily it was swayed. Psalm 73, verse number 13, he understood the vanity of trying to cleanse his own heart, but yet he tried his best to, once he did something wrong, he said, I know I took another man's wife, but I'll alleviate that problem by making sure that she doesn't have a husband, so she won't be anybody's wife anymore. So he killed her husband. Even then, he understood the vanity of trying to cleanse his own life, but yet still he fell into sin. So you've got somebody who's so knowledgeable, who's basically wrote the book of the Bible and wrote the book about his heart and God's understanding of his heart. Yet you've got somebody who falls into sin. We can only look at ourselves and say that we would be even more susceptible than David to fall into sin. I think a lot of people judge people in the Bible and say, I would never do that. I would never do that. I wouldn't do that. And I don't think you realize how easy it is to be a super saint like David was. How many was the last time you heard that? Super saint. Super saint. Who says that, Mom? Super saint? Yeah. What was Sam Davison's? That was super saint too, wasn't it? I think it was super saint. Super saint?
Yeah, and Woods was
Super saint. Super saint?
Dr. Green would say something.
I don't remember.
Super spiritual screwball.
Yeah, super spiritual screwballs. Super spiritual screwballs, Jim. But realizing just the man after God's own heart and the mighty man of God that David was, and how susceptible even he was to sin, makes us realize how frail our own selves are, and how we need to guard against these issues with our heart and understand its condition. That's the one thing the second thing that David did. Number 3, he acknowledged its need for a total reconstruction. A lot of times we'll be like, we'll clean our hearts out, like our annual spring cleaning, and be like, okay, I can quit doing this, and I heard some preaching about this single thing, so I guess I can stop doing that. It won't be that big of a deal, David didn't just do that. Look what he asked in verse number 12. Actually, where is it? Verse number 10 of verse number 50, chapter number 51 says, create in me a clean heart, O God, renew a right spirit in me. Understand what it means to create something. You're taking it from basically nothing and molding it into something that's new. That's what he was asking God to do. He didn't just clean out a little bit and say, I can get rid of this and I can get rid of that. He understood the condition of his heart, and he understood the need for a total reconstruction, a total recreation of his heart. He realized he had sunk to a depth to where he was, he allowed himself to be in a place that his heart was vexed. How many of you guys ever heard of that? A vexed is righteous soul. Who did that? That was Lot. Think about the depravity that Lot was in. He was in a town known for its rampant homosexuality and all those wicked things, and he was living there. He had vexed his righteous soul, much the same way that David had vexed his soul. He was in a position, vexed his heart. He needed to be recreated. David was in much the same position, but instead of being like Lot and trying to hang on to what he had, David said, get rid of it all. Recreate my heart. Don't just clean it out a little bit, scrub it up, polish it, get some new finish out there. Recreate it. That's what he was asking God. He said, create in me a clean heart. Oh God, renew a right spirit within me. He wasn't just opening up the door of his heart saying, can I have this or can I keep this? He said, get rid of it all, and then you, God, tell me what I can put back in there. That's what recreation is. And that's what we really need to do if we're asking God to cleanse our hearts, and say, don't just clean a little bit of it out, recreate it, totally change it. Drag everything out of it and ask God, is this okay for me to have it? If not, don't put it back in there. Think of your heart as a physical thing and say, I'm taking this out and this out and this out, getting rid of these things. Realize how wicked your heart can be. And you may say, well, what does all this have to do with? Well, here's how David knew that he was in this situation. Here's what he wanted to get back. Look at verse number 12. He said, this is his whole preface for wanting to do all this. He said, verse number 12, it said, restore to me the joy of thy salvation and uphold with me thy free spirit. He wanted his relationship with God back. He wanted the joy of his salvation back. So, if you're not happy where you're at, if you're unhappy doing what you're doing, if you're unhappy, then the first thing that you need to be looking at is, am I right with God? And that's what David said. I have no joy. Restore to me the joy of my salvation. You may ask yourself, where is your joy coming from? Happiness isn't within us. We're not like Joel Osteen. We can't pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and create and do the what's it called? What's that doctrine called? Where you name it and claim it?
Prosperity doctrine.
Prosperity doctrine, name it and claim it, or blab it and grab it, like some people say. But you can't do that. You can't just say, I will be, this, and I will be that. You can't just, by the way, if you ever want to listen to Joel Osteen, he has his old Sirius XM channel. Just look it up. And you can hear him go, and now, before I leave you guys, I just want you to proclaim within yourselves, and, you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you will be this, and you will be that, And that's why he's got everybody following him there. And is it Dallas or Houston? I think it's Dallas, right? Picture Houston? Houston? Is it Houston? Houston, we got a problem, and it's Joel Osteen. But you can't, happiness isn't within yourself. On the same note, happiness is not without yourself. It's neither within us nor without us. You cannot make yourself happy from the inside, nor can you make yourself happy from the outside. We look at all the things that people tell us are going to make us happy. If you just had a little bit more money, it'd make you happy. If you just had this, it'd make you happy. If you had a bigger house, it would make you happy. If you had more stuff, it would make you happy. But look at what David had. David was king of Israel. He had tons of loyal subjects. He had power over all of them. He had great riches. None of these things made him happy. You know what he realized where his joy came from? Was from Jesus Christ, from God. Restore to me the joy of my salvation. So happiness is neither within us or without us. It's coming from God. It only comes from God. That's why David asked, restore to me the joy of salvation. Joy only comes from the Lord. Think about all of the things that David had. None of it made him happy. So when you're thinking, if I just need this to be happy, no, it won't make you happy. Everybody always thinks that. If I just had this, it would make me happy. It's not true. David had everything in the world to live for, and yet all he wanted was just his relationship with the Lord back. And who knows what he would have given to do that. He said, I delight in the Lord. He just wanted God to be pleased with him. He said, I would do everything I know to do. Look at verse number 19. He said, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit and a broken and contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. Do good in thy good pleasure unto Zion. Build thou the walls of Jerusalem. Then shalt thou be pleased with the sacrifice of righteousness, with burnt offering and whole burnt offering. Then shalt thou offer bullocks upon thine altar. He's saying there's nothing I can do to restore my relationship with you that I can take of these things that I have. I can't give a big offering. I can't make sacrifices. The only thing I can do is be of a contrite heart and realize how broken and how poor I am and the condition of my heart, and I can get right with you, God. And that's what we need to realize, is if we're not happy, then find out why. If it leads back to the condition of our heart and how we're not joyful in a way that is godly, and how we don't understand the condition of our heart, we've allowed things to creep in and they're going unchecked, and we need to do exactly what David did and realize just the mess that we're in, like David did, and say, even though everything looks good around me, it's dirty on the inside, and I understand the condition of my heart. Understand the pridefulness of your heart. That's the one thing that will keep you from getting right with God, is pride. Because you say, you know what, I don't want to admit that I did anything wrong. And that's the first thing David got rid of with his pride. He said, I'll admit that yes, it was me, and no other person but me did this. I did that wrong thing, Nathan. It was me, and I sinned. And what did Nathan say? He said, and God has also forgiven your sin because you admitted what you did. Number two, he understood the many conditions of the human heart. He understood the pridefulness. He understood the hypocrisy. He understood the frailty. He understood his dependence upon God. He understood God's knowledge of the heart. He couldn't hide from God. He understood the frailty of his own heart. He understood the vanity of trying to cleanse it by himself. That's what we try and do. We try and say, if I can just do this better, God will be pleased. But God doesn't want that. He doesn't want you to offer bullocks and to offer those sacrifices that you consider good. He says, a broken spirit and a contrite heart. When's the last time we ever just broke ourselves before God and say, God, what's the matter with me? And look at all the little things, the little gray areas that we consider to be sins. Not too big sins, though, in our lives. And see how much those things offend and hurt God and keep us away from that joyful relationship that God wants us to have. And that's really the point I want to get across, is David went through and took an inventory and said, you know what, this is the condition of my heart. This is not only the condition of my heart, this is what am I missing here? The condition of my heart, but also flip this over, the need for reconstruction. He acknowledged the condition. he admitted his fault, and he acknowledged the need for a total reconstruction. That's what we need to do. If we're going to be like David and recover from being allowing ourselves to delve into wickedness, no matter how big or how small it is, we need to realize all the little things build up into big things. You know, David didn't just decide to go out and commit that sin with Bathsheba. It was those little things. First, he stayed home, and then things before that. First, he allowed himself to get comfortable and said, "You know what? I'm the king now. I can pretty much do whatever I want. You know, I've got all these things. I can stay home from battle. I can do this. I can allow myself to do whatever I want to do, because you know what? I'm king. God's given me liberty, and I can do those things." But he allowed himself step by step to be out of the will of God, and eventually it led to a bigger thing. And you may be checking your heart even now and saying, "Well, I don't have any big things in my heart. I don't have any big sins that I need to get rid of." But you also need to realize that it's not those big sins that you just jump into. It's little by little. You say, "Well, I can slack off here. I don't really need to, be a witness like I should. I can, I'm not comfortable in this situation. Being a witness, I don't need to do that. I'm not comfortable giving this amount this week. My check was smaller or whatever. I'm not comfortable doing that." It's those little things that allow us to be, allow us to be into a bigger sin early on. It's like putting a frog in a thing of cold water. It's how they boil frog legs. You dump them in the cold water and you turn the burner on. And you turn it higher and it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Before you know it, the little froggy is cooked. Same thing with lobsters, which I think they're making you do that now. You can't just throw them into a pot of boiling water because they scream. It's cruel and unusual punishment. You got to take and make sure that you do it, nice and slow. But that's just like we allow it to build and build and build until we realize we're so out of fellowship with God that we don't even know where we're at, just like David did. He said, "You know what, not only do I just need a spring cleaning of this bad boy, I need a total reconstruction, because I've allowed myself to get where I never should have allowed myself to be." Here he was, a man after God's own heart, and here he was, asking God for a total reconstruction of his heart, to create in him a new heart. And that's what I'm trying to get the point across now is, don't allow yourself to become a David. Admit fault. Acknowledge the condition of your heart, no matter how clean or how dirty you may think it is. And acknowledge the need for total reconstruction. Get rid of those things that are in your heart that you've allowed to creep in your heart life. Get rid of them before they become an issue like David had. And he had no problem killing someone, taking somebody else's wife, covering it all up, because he allowed those little things just to build up. And we need to not do that, and realize that, we need to be taking the inventory of what we've allowed into our lives, so we don't become like David did. And as Miss Colleen comes to play the invitation, think about that. As everybody's heads bowed, everybody's eyes closed, think about what the things that you've allowed in your life. They may be small. They may be things that nobody even considers a sin. But if it allows you to be more comfortable, to do such and such a thing, then it's just another step in that direction. It may not even be a sin that you acknowledge. But if you allow yourself to become in that direction, then you're that much closer to committing what we would consider a big sin, like David did, even though there's really no such thing as a big, and small sins. They all matter, in the long run. Well, as Miss Colleen comes to play the invitation.